Welcome to Forbidden Records. I'm Ansel, and today we're diving headfirst into the fascinating realm of Greek mythology. So we'll be talking about the three major gods of Olympus, often called the Big Three, and then we'll be shifting into three other famous Greek gods who have captured imaginations for centuries in this first part of this topic. There's so many Greek gods, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna have follow-up episodes to cover the other Greek gods that we have not covered in this episode, so you can look forward to that. So we'll be exploring their origins, their powers, their myths and legends. So grab a seat by the fire, or maybe by the hearths of Hestia, and let's journey back to Mount Olympus. So let's start with talking about the Big Three. Now, the Big Three are the three major gods that are known more often than not. They're the three major gods that are seemingly viewed as superior to the others. So in the Big Three, the first of them would be Zeus, the king of the gods. We start from the top. So Zeus, the ruler of the sky, the god of thunder, of justice and kingship. He's the father of several of the other Greek gods and the husband of Hera, the goddess of marriage, women, and family, and also known as the Queen of Gods. Now, Zeus was born to the Titans Rhea and Kronos, who is the father that Zeus famously escaped being swallowed by. That's like Zeus's whole mythology behind him. This escape led him to later lead the Olympians in a war against the Titans, known as the Titanomachy. Now, the iconic symbol that represents Zeus is a thunderbolt, or a lightning bolt, which is the weapon that he uses that gives him his power, I guess. It's where he channels his power through, his weapon, right? And this thunderbolt, or this lightning bolt, this weapon of his, was crafted by the Cyclopes for Zeus. Now, Zeus was known to be worshipped all across Greece, especially in Olympia, where the modern-day Olympic Games actually originated from. It was hosted in the past in ancient Greece in dedication to Zeus. And though he was a protector of order, he had a very complicated personality. So Zeus was notorious for, countless affairs with humans and nymphs, and etc., etc. The list goes on, right? And this resulted in him fathering heroes like Hercules and Perseus, who were half human and half god. So they were known as demigods, as well as the other Greek gods like Apollo and Athena. And Zeus, in basic terms, embodies power and authority and the unpredictable temperament of the skies, the lightnings, and the thunders. Next, we head into the depths of the ocean with Poseidon, a brother of Zeus. So Poseidon ruled over all the seas, the earthquakes, and the horses. Yes, the horses. It seems like the most out of place thing in this list of things that he rules over. But the ancient Greeks believed that Poseidon created horses and that it was his whole thing. So his symbol is a trident, which he is always seen with, and that was his weapon. Zeus has his lightning bolt, Poseidon has his trident. The trident was nicknamed as Earthshaker, which the powers that this trident had was that it could cause massive waves, devastating earthquakes, which could have easily wiped out cities like Atlantis, in the theory that we mentioned in the previous episode of this podcast. So in the mythologies, Poseidon clashed with other gods, and one of the most notable ones was Athena. Poseidon and Athena once competed to become the patrons of Athens. Now, Poseidon offered the people a saltwater spring, but Athena offered an olive tree. And eventually, the olive tree that Athena offered won the people's favor, and the patronism of Athens went to Athena. However, Poseidon was still worshipped by many others, especially sailors, right? They prayed to him for a safe voyage, and coastal cities built temples in his honor for the safety of their people. But just like the ocean, Poseidon was also known to have a volatile temperament. He could be calm one moment and destructive the next. Seems like there's a recurring trend between the brothers, right? The Big Threes. Poseidon and Zeus both have temperament issues. So we went from sky to sea. Now let's go even deeper down. Below the earth, let's go to the underground, to Hades, the ruler of the underworld. Now, Hades was often misunderstood. He wasn't the god of death like what people thought. He was the god of the realm where the souls go after death. The real god of death was Thanatos. So though he was also a god and one of the big three even. Hades didn't live on Mount Olympus like his brothers or like the other gods. He stayed in the underworld as a somber but fair ruler. Hades was associated with wealth, since all the precious metals on earth like gold were all found beneath the earth. But for Hades, his most famous myth is, of course, his story of how he got his wife, Persephone, by abducting her. Now, this seems a little drastic, which I do agree it is, but the man was in love. Okay, so Hades abducted Persephone, and this explains the cycle of the seasons on Earth. See, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, who is also one of the goddesses, and the second child of Cronus and Rhea. So Demeter was the goddess of harvest, fertility, agriculture, and grain. And so when Persephone was allowed to return to Demeter every year, the earth would bloom and flourish, in celebration of Persephone's return. And when Persephone had to return to Hades, winter would come, where the harvest and agriculture would diminish as a symbol of Demeter's heartbreak for her missing her daughter. However, despite this, Hades was never evil. He was just strict, headstrong, unyielding, and the embodiment of the inevitability of death. But Hades was a good guy. So now that we've met the big three, let's explore three other gods who, while they're not the rulers of sky, sea, or underworld, they're just as iconic in mythology. First up, we have Athena, which we mentioned earlier. So Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war, and battle strategy. And she was the most revered Olympian and supposedly never lost a war. Athena was born fully grown and armored and bursted out of Zeus's forehead after he swallowed the Titaness Metis, who was his first wife and the first goddess of war and deep thought. So, maybe that's how Athena got, her things. She inherited it from her mother, technically. However, the reason why Zeus swallowed Metis was to prevent a prophecy of a son overthrowing his throne. So, that kind of fix the problem with Athena because Athena isn't a sun. So yeah. But however, unlike the god of war, Ares, who represented the chaos of war, Athena was a symbol of strategic battle and justified causes for war. She was the patron goddess of Athens after winning the people's favor with her offering of an olive tree, like mentioned earlier. And the Parthenon that was built for her still stands in her honor till today in Athens. She also guided heroes like Odysseus and Perseus, offering them protection and wisdom during their quests. And now, when we think of wisdom, right, when we think of like a symbol to symbolize wisdom, we think of an owl, right? That symbol of being wise and knowledgeable. Well, the symbol of an owl was also the symbol that represented Athena, representing her knowledge and her foresight. Next, we talk about Apollo. So Apollo was a multi-talented god, right? He was associated with music, healing, archery, poetry, and prophecy. But he was known as the god of sun, music, and prophecy. He was often seen with a lyre, spreading harmony, and also wielding a deadly bow. However, his twin sister, Artemis, the goddess of hunt, wild animals, wilderness, chastity, and the moon, is more commonly depicted with a bow as a huntress. Now, Apollo was the center role in the Oracle of Delphi, where his priestesses spoke cryptic prophecies that shaped Greek history. And he represented balance and light and reason, but also punishment and plague when he was angered. And Apollo symbolized the Greek ideal of harmony, right? He had physical beauty and paired with intellect. So Apollo, being the god of sun, naturally his symbol was often, the sun. But sometimes Apollo was also pictured or portrayed or mentioned to own a golden chariot. So I guess that was his form of transportation. And last but not least, we have Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and desire. Now, according to one myth, Aphrodite was born from sea foam arising from the waves near Cyprus, and she embodied irresistible attraction, influencing gods and mortals alike. But her myths reveals complexity. Love wasn't always gentle, and her involvement in the Trojan War through the judgment of Paris showed how passion can spark conflict. Now, Aphrodite also had famous affairs, most notably with Ares, the god of war, symbolizing the link between love and strife. And even today, her influence lingers in words like aphrodisiac. Now, Aphrodite was known to be one of the most beautiful goddesses, and her line of suitors was endless. There were countless men that were after her, and everyone longed to win her heart. Now, Greek mythology's gods were more than just characters in old stories, right? They reflected the values of fear and hopes of the ancient Greeks. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades represented the grand forces of nature. The big three represented the big three forces of nature: sea, sky, and the inevitability of death. Athena, Apollo, and Aphrodite reflected the human experiences: wisdom, creativity, beauty, and of course, love. And together with all of these different factors combined, they formed a pantheon that explained not just the physical world, but the emotional and moral one as well. So even today, their names echo in literature, in art, psychology, and pop culture. For movies and books like Percy Jackson, right? That's the most talked about one right now. And that's actually also the thing that sparked my interest in Greek mythology. Was me reading the Percy Jackson series back in primary school. So, there's books and even brand names and everyday sayings, right? Like, the gods of Greece remain immortal in ways that their worshippers might have never ever even imagined. So that wraps up today's episode of The Forbidden Records. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through Olympus and beyond. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. It would really help others to discover this show. And if you have a topic that you're interested to hear me talk about in a future episode, leave those down in the comments as well, and I might make an episode about that. So until next time, may Athena grant you wisdom, may Apollo bring you light, and may Aphrodite spark a little love in your life. See ya!